Do you want to start a profitable game business? Something that sells, not just one or two copies, but something that people will genuinely enjoy and sold where people will find it? Are you curious, how do you file a business? Are you someone who's looking to get into the game industry on their own? Or perhaps a developer looking to leverage ChatGPT to save time on development? Hi, I'm Lucas, and I've built and tested several startups, my most recent of which has generated $500,000 in revenue. Of course, I've built games, and so have my friends who are currently building game studios or teaching classes at top universities. In this video, we'll take you through idea generation, problem and solution discovery, what you can build, where you can build it, how to make it truly enjoyable. We'll teach you how to file for a business, how to set up email lists, marketing, branding. You think that's too much for one video? Well, here's our secret: ChatGPT. That's right, everyone's favorite invention of the year. Most people have fiddled with it, including you probably. We'll teach you how you can leverage it, this game-changing revolutionary software, to save you countless hours at every step of the business and development process. You'll learn how to ask ChatGPT the right questions, how to figure out if the solutions are good, and how to piece everything together to build your business and game studio. Still not convinced that ChatGPT can teach you everything? We'll provide all the paid and free resources at the end of the video for you to explore, so you can dive more in depth and build the game that people will buy, play, love, and cherish. Stay tuned. This video will start by covering idea generation for your game. How will you come up with a name, the branching storylines, the gameplay features? What if you want to create a hybrid game like Hollow Knight? Or you want to bring in real-world events to create a fascinating atmospheric setting like the Pillars of Earth? How can iterative design be leveraged to make sure your game is amazing? Rapid prototyping, testing, iterating constantly, the same way that top startups are doing, to make sure that they build something that people actually want before they build it. Something that will save them lots of time and effort. Debugging is far quicker through ChatGPT than something like Stack Overflow. We won't teach you programming in detail. You have to learn C#, C++, Python, whatever language you're willing to use somewhere else. We'll teach you how to use ChatGPT for debugging through visual scripting tools so that both programmers and non-programmers can understand. And we'll briefly go over the development process. Is your code or visual scripting well designed? What about memory leaks if you're using something like C++? I know memory leaks were a pain in the ass when I first started using it. And what about hardware configurations, software updates, compatibility issues? We'll teach you how to save time on this whole process through ChatGPT. Test cases can be written with the help of ChatGPT. What if you forget an edge case? What if you don't think about one? What if it simply takes too much time? Have you really considered every way your inputs could affect the outputs? We'll teach you how you can cover those cases. AI can really help you figure out what direction to take. Starting a business is incredibly freeform, and knowing what direction to even take in the first place is tough. Google oftentimes won't tell you, and you'll have to spend an incredible amount of time planning. Like when I first wanted to build my first website, how would I create a React website to host on AWS? I Googled it, I could not find anything. ChatGPT came along, helped me tremendously. Now, we'll also discuss entrepreneurial principles. Why do people buy games? Where do they go? Why do people prefer one genre over another? What does their competition look like? And how can you improve over them? What about the type of game you want? There are many genres. We'll also discover game design. What do we mean when we say players want well-crafted puzzles? When they want meaningful choices? When they want well-crafted loops? How can these elements be used to improve your game? For the development, you'll learn what game engine you should use and how you should use it. You'll learn why user interface is so important. Your work in a development team and as a leader matters too. And what about filing a business? How do you file all the paperwork? Branding? What price do you set it at? How do you market? ChatGPT is excellent at creating your own market plan for you, so you don't have to learn all the details about marketing strategy. How will you also set up email lists? How will you reach customers and advertise? These are all things that we can help you learn. I hope you're ready to dive into the world of making games, and most importantly, making money. So let's start discussing how ChatGPT can be leveraged to help you at every single step. So we'll start with the 5W framework. Who, what, when, where, why, and also how. That's the framework you should ask ChatGPT every time you want to ask it a question. That's basically the very core fundamentals of prompt engineering. For example, idea generation and narrative design, when you want to generate gameplay features targeted to a specific target audience and you want to have challenges in your process that you want to overcome, then you would have to find a way to ask ChatGPT specific questions about your design, what you want to achieve, how you want to achieve it, why you want to achieve it, and that is how to get the most out of it in that specific process. And what if you want to create hybrid concepts? Combining different game ideas, genres, features, finding ways that a game can combine different mechanics, aesthetics, or narratives. This is one way that ChatGPT can help you in your process. And what about bringing in real-world events, whether it's historical, political, or economical events? For example, you want to combine a story together with a certain historical event, and sure, you could Google all the facts of the event, but what about how you will integrate it? How you will involve it in your story in a way that smooths over flawlessly. For example, you want to have a story about a declining kingdom that used to be powerful and admirable, or you want to have a story about a woman growing up in a poor, low-class family going through the difficulties of the early 19th century. You can have really any amount of depth and complexity without doing a ridiculous amount of research and figuring out how to involve it in your game. Personally, I found this to be the most idea-inspiring thing that you can do with ChatGPT. You have a sort of huge library in your mind and you're trying to puzzle all the pieces together of a story. This is one excellent use of AI. An example might be applied here, like the Pillars of Earth, Civilization 6. In the Pillars of Earth, which is a game based off of Ken's award-winning 1989 novel, it has a 21 chapter and is a video game that focuses on 12th century England and the story of Kingsbridge, where war, poverty, and corruption are very rife in this period. And we see three characters' lives being interchanged very unpredictably during this period, and we get a certain level of atmosphere that other games usually don't provide. So if you want to be building great historical rich games without having to consult a bunch of libraries, books, resources, videos you can find online, then ChatGPT is an excellent way to save yourself some time. Now I want to discuss iterative design a little bit further. It's a design methodology that involves a continuous cycle of prototyping, testing, and revising a product that several top startups throughout the early 21st century and 20th century have used in order to make sure that what they build is exactly what people want, customized down to the T, and will be something that people will buy at every step of the development process. So you come up with an idea, you verify it. Does it sound like a good idea? Is it solving a real problem that people have by asking them questions, trying to solve if they have a specific problem? Are you designing your website? Sketch it out. Very rough prototype. Building your game, prototype the game. Figure out a set of very basic features that you can use in order to test it out and see if people will enjoy the very core concept. And this idea is absolutely critical for any startup or game, anything involving any type of development process where you have a crucial need to make sure that you don't waste time building something people don't actually want. So for prototyping, here's an example of a code snippet for quick implementation. And this prototyping through ChatGPT can provide excellent feedback on early builds. Another thing I want to discuss is debugging. This is where it provides general debugging techniques, helps to decipher those terrible long debugging messages, and offer best practices to game development specifically. It can offer common design pattern insights and architectural approaches using game development. It can help you structure, it can help you blueprint out your ideas and make it more modular, reusable, and easier to test. And if there's any libraries or APIs you might be using in this process, it would help you to integrate these components efficiently. For memory management, It can help you to analyze error logs with memory leaks specifically, along with, of course, general error logs. And it would help you suggest ways to reduce memory usage if you give it a snippet of your code. Specifically, if you're using a language like C++, where you specifically assign and unassign and free memory, and it would help you to create a much more efficient data storage and retrieval tool by asking it these debugging techniques. It can also help you to profile and analyze your current memory storage and suggest tools or libraries that can help assist in identifying memory allocation issues or these kind of patterns that might cause an issue. And it will also assist you in garbage collection. And for something like compatibility issues between hardware configurations and software updates, certain platforms have specific requirements, and game developers, if they want to build a cross-platform game, they're going to have to consider how they can write more platform agnostic code and handle specific differences. For test cases, ChatGPT can help you figure out those edge cases you didn't think about, save you time on generating a ton of test cases, and will make sure that your code is tested more thoroughly. There's a ton of stuff everybody misses every time they write test cases, unless you're a genius, which is very hard to pull off, and it's something that everybody struggles with like crazy. And ChatGPT is excellent in finding these edge cases you couldn't think about, going through your code in a more of a white box method and helping you out there. It could help with multiplayer interaction, synchronization, latency handling, network stability when it comes to multiplayer games, which are usually very tough to test. Now on to my favorite part, entrepreneurship fundamentals. This is where we discuss first how iterative design can really be used throughout the business process and how it will save you countless hours in the development process. So as we discussed, the traditional method of building a product, well, having an idea first, then building the product, then selling it and testing it is a terrible idea, because you'll oftentimes spend time building something that you think is a great idea, but you haven't really tested it out, and most likely it will flop. You have the example of a few video games companies that do exactly this process, and they have flopped, like TMVU, for example. It was a big one in the early 2000s, and it completely tanked because the founder just spent so much time building something without really testing it. So the traditional model is flawed, and the new method is to first find a market problem. In this case, for games, it works a little bit differently, because the market problem is boredom. That's what you're building a game for, to help cure people's boredom. And your solution is, of course, the game, and you want to test the game by talking about your idea first with people that you know, with family, with friends, with people in the gaming community, and you ask them what they would change, what they like about it, what they if it is something that they would realistically buy. If somebody says that they would realistically buy a game with your idea, then that is the biggest validation you can receive. And once you validate your solution, you want to go and validate your prototype. You want to build out a sketch, just a very simple sketch of the game. You want to test it, see what you would change, and then you build out your prototype game that people can actually play on the computer, but it includes a very minimum feature set and the very core of the game. And if the core of the game is not fun, then you have to go back to the drawing board and figure out how to make the very basic, without any graphics, without any fancy fluff, how to make the basics very fun. And once you do that, then you can build out the full game and test it. And then you also want to test your market strategy, how you will sell it, where you will sell it, where people will find it. And you want to go to, again, the same people, ask them where they would buy it, if they would buy it from this place, where they hear about games from, and just make sure that the way you approach your marketing is fully tested as well. And then this way is pretty much guaranteed, if you hit all steps, to build a game that will actually sell. And this is the most important part of entrepreneurship fundamentals. And if you're going to take away one piece from this video, it is to make sure that you test everything, and you'll save yourself countless hours in the long run, and you'll be guaranteed to build a truly successful game. And when you test, I do want to stress something called the mom test. Don't just ask people if they like your idea, if they like the game, if they like the website, if they like your marketing plan, because usually people want to please you. They want to, make you feel good. They don't want to hurt your feelings. So you never want to ask somebody if they directly like something. You want to ask them what parts they like, what parts they would change, and how they would change it. And you also want to ask them if they would buy it. The buying part is the one where you figure out if people actually like it, because if people want to put their money where their mouths are, then you know for sure that your idea is far better than the average idea out there. A few common myths I wanted to discuss is firstly the hero myth, where you become the hero in your own story. You find an idea that you're passionate about, you believe in, and you go full steam ahead. The problem with this is that your idea is most likely flawed in several ways, and if you fall in love with your idea too early on, you will not be willing to change it, which is critical. Another common myth is the process myth, which is falling for the traditional idea of testing is not that important, and we just find a good idea and want to build it and see what people think after we build it. Talking about customer pain and emotion, you always want to find a problem that is more of a shark bite to the customer, something that is so significant they're willing to go out of their way to pay you money for it, rather than something small like a mosquito bite. So for example, take the idea of a little squeezer at the bottom of a toothpaste tube. You could buy it for $3, use it, squeeze out the last bit of toothpaste. And of course that is a terrible idea, not because it doesn't solve a problem, but it does solve a problem. You always have the last bit of toothpaste that you want to squeeze out, but the real problem is that it is so insignificant. People are not going to want to go out of their way to buy a little clamp, spend $3, even if it might save them in the long run, learn how to use it, deal with the packaging. It is really not a significant problem. You want to find something that is more of an aspirin instead of a vitamin. You want something that is really hits at the core of what people feel and what people will pay money to solve. And for video games, that works a little bit differently. The core pain is, of course, boredom, and the way you go about solving it is by building an entertaining game. But there's also a couple of other things that games hit at. For example, if you have a game like Stardew Valley, which I personally am a huge fan of, it focuses on solving the problem of chaos and overwhelming, and it reaches that point by giving you a game that is very calm and peaceful. And every game, every genre you can think of has a certain pain point that it is hitting at to try and solve. Like an adventure game, for example, would be focusing on maybe you feeling irrelevant, or like there's not much substance to your life and you want to have that sort of excitement that you can't find anywhere else. And these are all pain points that each game is working to solve. And if you find a significant reason for people to buy your game through these pain points, then you'll be on a bigger step to solving the first part of your business model. Every game out there has some form of competition that you're going to need to try and figure out how your competition works. You want to have a way you can stand out and provide a different form of value that other games cannot do. You want to ask yourself, why would somebody buy your game with little to no reviews at the time you publish it over something that is well established and somewhat similar? So you have to find something other than price, other than a small feature change, because anybody can compete on price. Anybody can, like a big game won't suddenly fall down because you make a slightly better version of it. You're gonna need some kind of unique value proposition, as it's called, that would help you to stand out and sell your game over them. You also want to look at, is your market growing? Is it a new trend or genre or type of game? Like, is it maybe you're hopping on the AI trend, like with this course. Maybe you're trying to find ways to incorporate AI into NPC dialogues. That is a new growing market, for example. Also got to consider, is there no competition perhaps? If there's no competition, then there's either one of two things true. Number one, you didn't do a thorough market research and you're missing out on competitors. Maybe you're thinking that, maybe you're thinking too narrow, like, okay, this is exactly my type of game down the T and there's no game exactly like it. But you have to consider what alternatives in the genre or what alternatives with similar game mechanics exist out there. You got to think a little broader. Second option, if there's no competition, is that you might be the first. And if you're the first, it's going to be something called a pioneering cost that is going to get in the way. This would be something that all first industry leaders in every industry face, where they have to work a lot harder to try and create something new, and is generally not recommended for new game developers, something you want to try and do once you have already established yourself and built one or two successful games. So a minimum feature set is something that your game is going to want to follow for a prototype. So we have an example of the game called PT of Silent Hill. It's a game that came out with a demo focusing on the core mechanics without any extra fluff or beautiful pictures, beautiful sounds. There were some graphics, sure, but it was focusing more on, will the very core of the game be fun? If the core of the game is fun, then you can have whatever fluff you want to add, and it will just build on your game. And this is something where you want to first ask yourself, before you build it, who will be the target audience? Why should people care? And what do you want users to do? A failing example of a game that did not pass this minimum feature set is the game Rust. I love the game Rust right now, but when it first came out, it was not good. The developer just steamrolled it, said, here's the game, and didn't really test the minimum feature set, so you had to go back and spend years in early access trying to redo things, and it was kind of a mess. So you want to focus on making your minimum feature set demo be something that can stand alone as a fun game. You want to seek to understand the customer, what they like, what they don't like in your demo. You want to show their solution. You want to test demand. Demand will be something we discuss later, how you can test it through mailing list or demos or social media. And you basically want your game to survive without all the pretty fluff. For example, the game Limb, as we see here, is a very kind of ugly game, but it focuses on just making game mechanics fun and enjoyable, and it just somehow works. Now to talk more about game design. What kind of games you can build? You can build anything from adventure games like Stray, which focus on joy and wonder, curiosity, but at the same time have that scare element that you feel like you're a stray cat and you're scared of what's out there and what's new to discover. You can have RPG games like Disco Elysium. You can have strategy games like Civ 6, where you're trying to understand the economic and political commonalities, differences between cultures and people, and try and come up with strategies to take over the world. You can have games like platformers like Celeste. You focus on perseverance and resilience in a difficult environment. You can have first-person shooters like Overwatch, focus on corporation as a core game mechanic. And sandbox games like Universe Sandbox, where you get to blow up planets and shoot them into the sun for fun. And really the scope is endless what kind of games you can do. It's all up to your imagination, and we're happy to try and help you to reach your dream game. So game design is focused on how you can captivate players, enhance the player experience, and contribute to the overall success of the game. It's focused on creating the structure, mechanics, and rules that will enhance the overall experience, define objectives, gameplay systems, progression, balance, aesthetics, and storytelling elements. Do you want a script-based game or a mechanic-based game? There are some games that just focus on the storytelling aspect rather than the mechanics of the game. You have focus on well-crafted challenges, meaningful player choices, and rewarding gameplay loops that keep players more motivated. You want to balance challenging and difficulty levels in the game. You want to provide a sense of accomplishment without overwhelming them. You have games that lean on the more difficult side, like Dark Souls, that is very challenging, but somehow still remains balanced. It is punishing, but aims for a type of player who likes to be punished and is trying to not be too punishing for them. Or you can have a more easy game, relaxing game that anybody of any age can get along with if they want to feel, less overwhelmed, if they want to feel relaxed. But every game still has these carefully crafted balance and difficulty levels. You can have a longer game, which means they're usually more well designed and keeps players engaged more. You can have a shorter game that is more like a one-shot. I wanted to go over the game Hollow Knight as a bit of a case study, discuss why the game mechanics are good and give you some general advice for your own game. So we have Hollow Knight, which is a popular platformer game, incredibly atmospheric, beautiful visuals, and one thing that you would notice immediately when playing is the sound and the music of the game. For example, when you walk into the City of Tears, you have this immersive feeling, you have this siren quality of background music that draws players into the game world. You have a storytelling of characters in this mysterious, depressing, dark world that is hopeful, beauty, and a bit heartbreaking. You have an environment design with the colors and the music that helps tell the story of a character and a worldview that is excellent for decision making. It guides you along the way of what path to take. You have a game mechanic and game skill that's required that is relatively high, but you have eventually, after a couple hours, you get a real good hang of it, and it gives you a heightened sense of accomplishment. It's a learning curve that is perfectly balanced in order to make you feel like you've thoroughly progressed and gotten better at playing video games, even just after a couple hours of this game. You have a level design and combat system that is very fluid to play, and you have a slightly punishing nature when you die, which is a bit controversial, but it adds a bit more to the game depth. Moving on to game development, I wanted to discuss the popular game making tools, their pros and cons, and which one is most likely to be the best match for your process. First off, Unity, incredibly popular. It's a cross-platform game engine, so you can use it to develop games for multiple different systems, web, mobile, you name it, and it has a support for over 25 platforms. It has integrated development tools, IDEs, graphic tools, version controls, a large community support and resources, easy to start with, both for 2D and 3D, and with a slightly steeper learning curve. There will be a slight amount of work that is required until you get started, but once you do that, it becomes relatively easy to create decent 2D and 3D games with. File sizes are a little larger than other game engines, but I think it makes up for that with the relative ease of use. Unreal Engine can be considered the sister version of Unity. It's a tool that is used to produce games in multiple genres, integrated key development tools, IDEs, graphic control, version control. It is a little bit better for 3D or mobile games, if that's what you're looking to develop compared to Unity. Also has a relatively steep learning curve. Compared to Unity, it's a little bit steeper, a little bit more difficult to learn, and might need a little bit higher hardware requirement in order to program it, and slightly limited platform support compared to Unity. Then you're going into slightly easier tools like GameMaker. It is a 2D development tool with cross-platform support for PC, mobile, including console games if that's what you're into, and has its own scripting language called the GameMaker language, which is relatively easy to use. And unfortunately, you can't use it outside of GameMaker. It is a very specific scripting language. And because it's a scripting language, you don't technically need programming experience. It can be relatively easy to pick up through studying on your own if you don't have a extensive programming background. GameMaker does allow for rapid prototyping. It's a built-in feature that helps with iterative design, but it's mostly focused on 2D games with limited 3D capability, and there's also less resources to learn about it compared to the larger game engines out there. Then you have a game engine called Phaser, which was the first game engine that I used myself I find it relatively easy to use. It involves JavaScript programming, but it unfortunately only works for the web browser. So if you want to make your first game be a simple game, this could be for you. Unfortunately, you can't use it for a mobile game or console game. It's relatively limited in this sense. The code is open source, community is active, and the primary focus is web development, so the support is limited in other areas. The language you can build your game with, if you want to go for a more focused on programming route for bigger games, C# and C++ are widely used. For Unity, Unreal Engine, C++ is also versatile in a lot of other programming fields. It is used by a lot of big companies for their older code databases. Is a relatively difficult language to learn compared to something like Python or JavaScript. There's a high focus on memory management, how you give different data structures resources in your memory and how you would free them, and this generally slows down the development process a little bit. Then you have something like JavaScript, which is used for web-based games and is a very popular language and also used in a lot of other web development tools and software outside of game development. And you have Lua, which is a lightweight scripting language and is often used for scripting game logic and AI behaviors. It's a bit smaller, doesn't have many practical uses outside of game development. And then you have Python, which is arguably the most popular game language in the world and language for programming in general. Sorry, not the most popular for gaming, but it is the most popular in the world for other forms of software. It is incredibly easy to use and learn compared to other languages. Syntax is simple and plain. There's no memory management. Everything with garbage collection is automatic, and it's often used for game prototyping. And the reason it's used for prototyping is that it's quick to program a game in it. The downside is though that it's a bit slower than other ones, and you wouldn't have a way to save, for example, memory on it by not being able to specifically declare how memory is allocated or released. For speed, storage, and memory management, I wanted to briefly discuss how the languages differ. C# has automatic memory management and a speed that is good but still a bit slower than C++. And the storage file size is relatively large because of the .NET runtime, which is necessary to run C# games. C++ has thorough memory management, has fast speed when you run it due to low-level optimization, and relatively small file size due to the low-level nature of the code. JavaScript memory management is automatic. Speed is relatively good, especially for web-based games, and storage file size is relatively small due to the lightweight nature, so it's good for web-based games to reduce load times and storage requirements. Lua, automatic memory management. Speed is sufficient for scripting game logic tasks, which require performance-critical components due to simplicity and ease of integration, and relatively small file size. For Python, memory management is again automatic. Speed is slower because it is an interpretive language, but still good for most games. Large file size because of the extensive use of libraries. Now moving on to the last major topic of this video, I wanted to discuss selling and marketing your game. First, talking about your team and your role in the team. There are several different types of people needed in a game studio: game designers, graphic designers, game developers, audio engineers, quality assurance testers, project managers in the developer specific category. And then you would also need marketers, salespeople, business people, you need tech support, and that should generally cover most of the bases needed to get started. Now, depending on the size of your company, you can have somebody taking on multiple roles. Of course, you don't need like 20 people to create a game studio. That is not what most people start with. These are the general roles that you would need, and so you can have somebody take on multiple roles. You want to really stress the importance of hiring the right staff. There is a massive difference between a productive employee and a non-productive employee. You want to do your thorough research in making sure that you ask the right questions in the interview process and figure out if the person you're hiring has the experience you need and is the right fit with the company culture that you want to build. The dream is to become one of the big game companies of the world, like Nintendo or Sega in Japan, or something like Blizzard, EA, Epic Games here in the US. And to start with that, you have to consider filing for a business as the absolute first start of a business. At a much smaller scale, you would want to consider what type of business to create. All the big ones are corporations, but that's usually a bit too much for a small game studio, as you can usually change this thing later on with some extra work if you grow to that size. So, what are the type of game business you can make? You can file for a sole proprietorship as the most basic form of business. This is something where you're doing business as yourself, with the business name technically being your name, but you can have a DBA as it's called in order to call yourself something, more like an actual game company instead of your actual name. This is a relatively cheap company to set up, maybe just $100 worth of paperwork and a couple hours of time, and you're good to go. This is simple for filing taxes and setting up, but unfortunately you do lack the liability benefits you might find in a LLC or a corporation. The paperwork that would be needed is essentially filing with your Secretary of State, filing a doing business as with your local county, doing a name reservation on this SOS website, filing for a EIN with the IRS, and optionally getting a sales and use tax permit for selling your games yourself if that's what you intend to do, and getting insurance if you need that for your company. Another good type of business you can file for is called an LLC, or a limited liability corporation. This generally runs around $400 to set up, and the main benefit is the reduced liability, meaning that if somebody were to, for example, sue your company, they can't sue you and for what you're worth. They can only sue your company and for what they are worth. And it provides a benefit of a pass-through tax system, same as sole proprietorship. I forgot to mention that earlier, but it is a way to save money on taxes by having the taxes pass through to you, so you pay it yourself, and this generally reduces tax liability a little bit. The cons of an LLC compared to, for example, a corporation is that it's a little bit difficult to transfer your ownership rights. And for setting up an LLC, what is required is the same paperwork as a sole proprietorship, but you would also need a articles of organization, which determines the what you're doing as a business, the operating agreement, which is the how you're doing your business, and the minutes of the first meeting, which determines the equity between you and other people in the company and how much you would own as a share. A corporation is the third major type of business you can file. It is a much more complicated type of business to file, involving a massive amount of paperwork, slightly higher cost than LLC, maybe around $500, depending on the state you live in. Recommended to file a corporation in Delaware, regardless of what state you're in, because they have the best laws around it, and generally will save you on paying taxes, corporate taxes. This type of corporation is, and this type of business structure in general, is not recommended for small studios. I would generally recommend an LLC over anything if you're looking to start up with 2 or 3 people, because this will give you all that you need, all the tax benefits you need without needing the excess paperwork. Corporation is mainly used for getting funding if you're looking for outside funding from angel investors, because this allows for a very easy way to give shares to people who invest in your company, and would be easy to transfer your company and things like that would help you in your fundraising stage. The branding and naming part is easily done through ChatGPT, as you can see here. Name generation is excellent resource of AI. You can ask what type of name and what style of name, and it'll give you a list of 10 names at a time, and then you can easily ask it to make it more, modern name, or maybe a minimalistic name if that's what you're going for, maybe more of a RPG style name, and it can really just work endlessly and endlessly until you find the perfect name for yourself. For bank accounts and accounting, if you have a sole proprietorship, I would recommend using something like Novo. It is a simple to use, beginner-friendly business bank account. I do have a referral link in the description. You do get $40 if you sign up to that one. If you want to go for something like a LLC focused bank account or corporation focused bank account, Mercury is the best out there. They have an extreme popularity for larger, more established, or I shouldn't say more established, I should say more complexly filed businesses like LLCs. And for accounting, definitely use some accounting software like Intuit. If you have taken accounting class and it's a really small business, you could try doing all that yourself, but I wouldn't recommend it. For email lists, they are an excellent way to test demand. You could try something like MailChimp, which is the most popular out there. And along with your email list, you can have a landing page, and this you can build yourself with React if you're more familiar with programming, or using something like WordPress if you're not. And they would help with tying in with your mailing list and determining demand for your product, and also serve as a bit of an advertisement, as you can include things like blog posts to help with your search engine optimization and provide resources for people to learn more about your product. Focusing on the where to sell and how to sell is where ChatGPT can help you build an extensive marketing plan, along with figuring out what game stores to sell on, or if you should try selling yourself, it'll help you figure out what channels to sell to, what price, figuring out your cost and revenue structure, and figure out where you should be advertising your product, whether that's YouTube demos, YouTube trailers, TikTok even, social media. It'll help with all of those things. And along with those free advertisings, you can have a Google AdSense, which is basically what you see whenever you find an ad on a website. They most likely use Google AdSense, and this will help you to advertise your product. Imagine creating your own profitable game studio, where your games captivate audiences and generate plenty of revenue. We've briefly gone over all the topics that you would need to create your own game studio, but of course there's a little bit more. We've included a bunch of links in the description to free resources for you to dive into and discover. While the information is decent, there are far more efficient ways to learn. You'll be spending 100 hours trying to go through everything, piecemeal things together, will take even longer, and sometimes you might be missing a little bit of context, or perhaps they don't fit as well as you would have imagined. So, to help you master all the crucial aspects of building a game studio, we've compiled an online course to help you dive more in depth on each topic we've mentioned. This will be a 12-hour course with all the videos, readings, quizzes, and enthusiasm and motivation to keep yourself going, to allow you to practice on your own to solidify each concept. You'll be able to build the game that you want in a far more efficient way, with information that fits together well, flows along smoothly, and will help you master game development. So visit the link in our description to embark on a game-changing journey with us to build your own game studio. The website shows you all the in-depth topics that we'll discuss, all the outlines. We'll provide all the information that the course has to offer. All of our other instructors are well experienced in the game industry, having built their own game studio or are currently working on them. All our instructors have masters and PhDs from top universities like Duke. Guest lecturers include people who have taught in the industry for several years at graduate school levels. We'll teach you how to build any type of game you want, from basic 2D shooters to complex, novel, AI-based games, where you can have NPC dialogues that are completely AI generated with complex storylines and complete character customization. We'll teach you the design principles to make these games, and we'll teach you the basic development process to go through them, so you can explore on your own and truly build something that you want. Learn from those who have built and those who really know how to teach. We're launching the first course on August 12th as a beta for a very steep discount from our normal price. At a cost of a normal AAA game, you'll be able to have full access to the course and quick access to instructor responses. So if you want to get into the game industry on your own, or you're a developer looking to leverage ChatGPT at every step in the process, or somebody who wants to brush up on the business fundamentals of building a game studio, then this course is for you. AI can be really used for a lot more than people expect. And unlike any other course you'll find on this topic, no other course will teach you how to save this much time leveraging AI, or even just leveraging it in the first place. We'll include several readings on entrepreneurial fundamentals, game design, game development, and prompt engineering. So come build amazing games with us, and let the course speak for itself. If you're not satisfied, we have a 2-week money back, no questions asked guarantee. So don't miss the opportunity to unlock your true game building potential. Join us at elevic.ai and see for yourself how you can build a game that will be enjoyed all across the globe. So remember to subscribe for future content, like if you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you in the course.